Okay. Let's get our agenda.
Okay.
Whether we have first minutes? Let's see.
Call to order on minutes.
Yes. Has anyone read through the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent, thank you. So just to pick up on our last week, we did send out sort of reorganized our action item list into different groups, administrative steps, regulatory changes, and town policy changes and investments. And we also did send out a little Survey Monkey questionnaire. I'm hoping, did anyone have an opportunity to fill that out this week to get a little feedback?
We've had
Yeah, I
5
did.
responses.
Okay. So are you back, Sarah?
Sorry, folks. I really, best intentions. I was here nice and early without my glasses on, and I set off the alarm in my whole New Haven building. So that was a lot of excitement for everyone. And
Nicely
it's been
done.
going for like 15 minutes. So just the noise, just having that noise, it's like when you have a crying baby, if anyone knows that. And when the crying baby stops, you need just like a minute to say, whew. So I'm terribly sorry, best laid plans. But so I heard you passed the minutes already, so excellent, and thank you. And let me take out my agenda.
I think we were, Sarah, we were, the next one was the goals. And we were just getting feedback as far as we've had 5 members complete the questionnaire.
Yeah, I want to say, I think Rachel, you reorganized everything, and I found that very helpful. I don't know for others who completed the questionnaire, there were a few things where I just felt like yes, 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 and
Yeah.
I have a feeling that I don't know. I didn't see the results, and John and Rachel, you can tell me that some of us would just say yes, 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 and then there were other things where I wasn't saying no, but I wasn't sure if we didn't already have this. And I also was totally baffled as to what it would mean. So I know you were supposed to say, I need to hear more or other, but I found myself picking between the two of those. There were very few, I think I had 2 or 3 where I said, doesn't fit Madison. For those who filled it out, did you have the same experience or no? Or John or Rachel, you want to tell us with the results, what, if it told you anything that was helpful?
So I mean, this is the very definition of small sample size, and I'll show. I think I can share my screen.
And yet it's not a small sample size compared to the amount
Right.
of people who could have answered. It's probably like 80%, you know?
So this is the graphics here are not very helpful just because there are so many questions.
Right.
But generally, the ones with the highest green bars are the most popular. And so the ones with the weighted average, if you can see this, the weighted average closest to 1 are the most popular. So the things that were the unanimous one is devoting a municipal website to municipal policies and funding opportunities and information, followed by some of the ones that are 1.2s, which are establish a standing housing committee, actively solicit and participate with developer efforts to seek low income tax credits. This one here, allow conversion of underused office commercial space to multifamily, which is interesting. Considering development of potential surplus unrestricted municipal land. pursuing partnerships with developers. And those were the 1s and the 1.2s. So, that's not a bad place to start. And then, there were some that were the higher yellows. I don't think that these are appropriate, which would be numbers over 2, which would be like provide greater administrative and financial support to area housing authorities, create and fund a municipal program for first-time home buyers, seek to incentive a community of ownership and building of generational wealth. All were 2 or over, 2.6, allow for middle density housing as of right in targeted areas. Well, that's interesting. And larger historic home retrofits. That was relatively unpopular. And again,
John, could I
of
just
5 responses. Yeah, go ahead.
And I'm sorry, and maybe others didn't find it this way, but I know we were trying to just see how we could ease the burden of discussing all of these, but I would hesitate to say something was, unless it says
No, I know what you're saying.
no. There were so many where I thought, can we do that? What does that mean? What does that entail? I'll give you an example. With the accessory dwelling units, it said, make it as of right. And I thought, don't we already have it as of right? So that would be stupid. But then I thought maybe we don't have it as of right. And so a lot of these just really, as annoying as it is, require discussion. It's just silly I felt it was hard for me to vote. And that's why the first time I looked at it, I felt like, I don't know what I'm doing. But so maybe since Rachel organized it so neatly, maybe we can't do all of it today, but could we do some of it? Talk through what these things could mean, or is that going to, what do you think? What do you think is the best use of today? Should we just?
Well, I am happy to, I don't know. I guess if there were areas where you had questions or people had questions, I guess, to start with the question of as of right ADUs, Aaron Mannix, correct me if I'm wrong. It's not truly as of right at this point, is it?
They are by permit. Yes, there is a zoning permit. We do.
A zoning permit. Okay.
We're not. Yes, it's not a special exception. So it is technically.
Yeah. So it's like the same with the single family residence. You could do the same thing, same
Right.
process. Okay.
We are not necessarily in harmony with all of the language of PA 2129. So that's something that we can. And actually, John did provide did a little work for the Planning and Zoning Commission, did a table between what our current regulations are and what the legislative language is. And for those of you who are not aware, back in July, the legislature did specify certain criteria for ADUs as of right. And but it provides a caveat to municipalities for an opt-out option, and that has to be done. The municipality has to make a decision by January 2023, and that requires majority vote of the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Board of Selectmen to opt out. So that's where our Planning and Zoning Commission was looking at the differences between them to see, are there amendments that they're comfortable with to bringing us closer and in sync with that legislative language, and if there are reasons why we may want to opt out of the statutory provisions. For example, in case the law changes at some point and Madison wants to, it's a one-time opportunity. So if Madison wants to preserve the right to tweak their accessory apartment regulations at some point, should the laws change, this would be our opportunity this year to maintain that.
So Aaron, I'm so sorry. I feel like we need to get to the forest here. We're definitely in the weeds. I was just giving an example of how it was hard to answer this. And so I think, each one of these could be a very lengthy discussion. And I'm looking to all of you to say, what is the best way to organize this? So we talked about this Survey Monkey, but maybe what we could do is start with the ones where we said, I need more discussion on it. to have some discussion on that and say
Sure.
we'll get through 5 or 6. And, I hear that you said that only one Devoto Municipal webpage got a unanimous yes. So I sort of feel like maybe we put some in the yes. So one way to do it is for us to go through I need more information on that, and for us just to talk about it for about 15 minutes here and see what goals we can get from that. And another way to do it is to go through Rachel's list of, administrative steps versus regulatory changes, and start to go through it that way and say, today we'll go through administrative steps. And so John and Aaron and Rachel, given what we would need to talk about, I guess what I'm trying to say, but correct me if I'm wrong, anybody who's on this call, that I don't find the voting all that, but are you looking to see what we said, I need more information or other?
Yeah, well,
Sorry.
so.
Say why not the ones that were checked? Because I checked several with I need more information.
Need more information.
There must be kind of a majority of questions where the majority indicated they need more information. Why don't we focus on those instead of the ones that are nearly unanimous? I mean, the ones that are
fine.
the 1.2s or whatever seem pretty self-evident, I think, to anybody who did the survey. So why not focus on the ones where we collectively said we need more information?
So John and Rachel and Aaron, would we have a fruitful discussion if we spent like 15, 20 minutes on some of those and what they mean and what they would entail?
Sure, if you'd like. So I've reorganized this and zoomed in, so hopefully people can see this better. So this column here, where it says this is interesting, but I need more information. There are 4 that received 80%. So 4 of the 5 people said, yeah, we need more information. They're kind of, some of them are kind of catch-all. One is consider innovative zoning approaches, including incentive housing zones, neighborhood revitalization zones, and transfer of development rights. And that's a real basket of complicated stuff. But that sort of involves,
John,
yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Can I just also ask that, if possible, when we're discussing these, can we talk about it? And I think probably Aaron will have to jump in, but can we talk about it in terms of what it could look like for Madison specifically, using real kind of examples? I think that would be helpful for those of us who are not in the world of zoning.
Yeah, sure.
And probably the general public.
Sure. Okay.
I don't think I'm prepared to do that this morning. As there are multiple options here.
Well, yeah, so let me just go through the 4 that were highlighted as need more information, and if people want to jump on one or the other, why don't we start there? The second was reduce or eliminate minimum lot sizes, which are currently 1 acre, 2 acre, 3 acre, in favor of soil-based zoning, which would rely on the capacity of the soil and public health analysis to determine density. The third is create zoning regulations for cottage clusters, incentivizing starter houses and pocket neighborhoods, which would be, in the case of Madison, something like the Ledges or the General's residence on a more widespread scale and perhaps even higher density in certain areas, because those tended to be a little bit higher end clusters. And then
so that change wouldn't necessarily, that would also allow for clusters of higher priced housing, not necessarily affordable, like the Ledges, for example.
Right. Well, and that would be if you wanted to, have that incorporating some affordable also, you'd need to do that in combination with inclusionary zoning, which is somewhere probably down here. A2I inclusionary zoning, which sets aside, a mandatory minimum for developments. So yeah, some of these things would have to work in concert with each other. And then the fourth is seek to incentivize a community of ownership and building of generational wealth, which is basically something that the town of Thompson decided that they wanted to incorporate. So I dumped it in there as a suggestion. I'm not even totally sure that they know what that means. But I threw it in. It's you could go a couple of directions with that one. But at any rate, if people have follow-up questions on any of those, we can have a more focused discussion. In the case of the minimum, the lot size and soil-based zoning, this is something that a couple of municipalities in Connecticut have done. I believe Washington, Connecticut, actually Thompson recently did that, where instead of on your zoning chart, you say, you need 2 acres for a property. If you're developing a subdivision or something like that, it's really, let's test the soil. Let's see what big a septic system we can get in there. And that would dictate how many houses or how many units.
John,
So
is that everywhere in town? That's their entire zoning, or was that like focused in a specific area?
I think in Washington, it's the entire town. And in Thompson, it's basically everywhere that there's not a sewer line. Yeah.
Oh, okay, so.
And so when you have something like that that's based on soil, how do you control for like out of control density?
Well, I
Right,
mean,
'cause, like, what if the
it's regulated by
soil-
it's basically regulated by public health code. And, so there's separating distances from lot lines or separating distances from private wells,
Yeah.
separating distances from structures. And so it's a public health question, and it's a geometry question.
Right, but what if the soil test reveals that there could be more housing than would be considered palatable by, people in the community?
Well, that's the question. That's,
I mean, how do you?
yeah. What's palatable to you? What's palatable to Peter? What's palatable to Sarah? That you're not going to get the same answer to all of them. And so that's why, if you need an objective standard, it's the soil. Otherwise you're basically picking arbitrary numbers, which basically every town in the state does. 2 acres is entirely arbitrary.
Right, but could you do a combination of soil up to X amount?
Sure, of course. But then then you're basically picking numbers by consensus.
Yeah.
I find this really hard to wrap our heads around, and in terms of some of these are how you could allow more than one house on a place, but that's not going to encourage affordable housing necessarily. And I don't know. I don't know if that's an after. I mean, I just, these are separated. These are quite confusing to me. And I guess, John and Rachel, since you've done this with other groups, when they came up with these goals, how do you, take these 28, and of course we could have different goals, and say, how have you guided people in this discussion?
Well, I mean, first of all, this is the first time where we're giving you the whole list. I think in a lot of our earlier affordable housing plans, we've started with 5, 6, 7 ideas, and based on kind of a deeper dive into what and it's been mostly towns that we were pretty deeply familiar with. So there was a greater sense of what might work and what might be appropriate. So this was really just sort of in response to the question, well, what are other towns doing? And here's the answer. Here's a whole bunch of things. We're just here to try to facilitate the process on however it might work best for this. And obviously there's maybe information overload at this point. And we need to find a way to ratchet it back. But if there are I guess maybe my hope was that a couple of things that, maybe 5 to 7 things would really pop out and be like, yeah, that's what we want to do. And it seems like we're not necessarily there, but that's okay.
So, I mean, it's hard. So would you mind not sharing, stop sharing the screen for a second? So for those communities that came up with things, did they pick their own things and then you gave them a deeper dive into them? I'm just trying to, and I don't know, folks, anyone can help me speak up here. There are 28 things, and I'm going to just be honest and say, I don't know what like 16 of them are exactly. I mean, not to say I don't understand what you're writing, although in some of them I really need to understand what you're writing, but in many of them, I don't know what that would look like in Madison. So maybe is it worth it to go through some of them and learn what they are? Anyone can jump in and tell me what you're thinking, because I think this is not getting us to our finished product. And I don't want to be arbitrary about picking something. Like, I know what a website is. I know what establishing a standing housing committee is. Some of these things are, sort of no-brainers, pretty easy. But I don't want a list of recommendations just because we don't understand the other things.
I guess,
Thought?
yeah, my thought, Sarah, is that we got the narrative 2 weeks ago, the first opening chapters of this, and that was also seemingly information overload. And now we got these list of items, and I'm wondering, how can we start to stitch, these strategies with the narrative in a way that maybe focuses the list down a little bit more. So, if the narrative is we have this demographic of people that are looking to move into Madison, what strategies of this list are going to benefit those people most? I guess is kind of how I'm trying to think about how we weed out some of all this information and continue to build the report moving forward.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And to carry it one step further, to evaluate these options in light of what we get back from the survey responses. So looking at what Chad was saying and what are people saying in the surveys might help us to further analyze, how appropriate these options are.
I think
that's a great point.
I'd like to jump in here for a minute, if I could, offer the perspective maybe of the elected officials in town. I am learning a lot from this survey and from the discussion of this committee. And I sense, though, that when it's time to issue the final report, it's really issued to 2 different audiences. The more detailed report with perhaps the more technical recommendations, I think is very valuable, and that should be directed towards elected officials and public and P&Z officials. But I think this committee is also reporting to the general public. And the general public is going to be interested in 3 or 4 takeaway messages of what this committee has uncovered or what this committee is recommending going forward. The attention span of the public is somewhat limited. And so coming forward with 3 or 4 future directions is, I think, what the majority of the public will be looking for. So I would urge us to think on both of those levels. As we look at the survey results this morning, I would be interested from learning from John, what are the 3 takeaway messages from this survey? As I look at the list of potential recommendations, what are the 3 that would be most easily explainable to the public and understandable to the public? So to me, the final report has an executive summary, which the public can digest, and then more detailed information for elected and appointed officials who have to move forward with this. So my takeaway message is we have 2 audiences. We need to speak to the general public very clearly.
Okay, so why don't we do this? Why don't we move on to the survey results, the second survey results, what we've learned so far, following sort of what Chad was saying. Let's learn what people are saying, and maybe following what Al was saying about hearing from the public and then responding to what they say. Similarly, I think SCROG, their possibly the meeting we have with them where they talk about, you know, their existing conditions report, which I don't know if that's just from this 1 hour they spent driving around. It's very confusing. I mean, I know that they wrote this 50-page thing, but maybe we listen to what they've said and then we start talking about what the goals are. I mean, and we have these in the background to research ourselves and figure out what sounds good to us, because I'm a little bit at a loss as to how to make sense of all of the, you know, and it sounds like other committees came up with their own ideas, and I'm a little bit at a loss as to how they did that. Did they have a consultant saying these are the 4 things? You know, I don't know, but maybe we could go through the second surveys, and maybe it's a longer discussion, John and Aaron, because I just don't think I understand, Al, what you're saying. I just think it's really hard if we don't know what most of these mean or how they would play out in Madison. I don't want to recommend them yet. I just don't know what I'm doing. So why don't we hear about the second surveys? I know that we have the narrative to complete this week. A few of us are looking at that, and I apologize that I didn't look at it last week, but we will get that narrative done. We will have the SCROG meeting, and maybe some things will become clearer as to what we need to take a deeper dive in. John and Rachel, do you want to share the second survey results?
Hey, Sarah, it's Peter. I just have a quick question. We also seem to have gotten a pretty far advanced document from SCROG as to our plan as well.
Yeah,
you know, and I put it on my desktop to read it because I think it just came yesterday, but they've gone pretty far as well. Again, they don't have any recommendations. And then I spent some time looking at some of the other plans that were written. And I think we do, and maybe this is making Al's point again, I think we just need to come up with, 7 or 8 recommendations that we think are achievable, that make sense, that everybody can relate to. And I think it's also really important that we appreciate that this is just a launching point for a much broader discussion about affordable housing down the road as we move through this process, that this document itself isn't the be all end all. It's going to change, it's going to morph. And as people get more behind the programs of affordable housing, they're going to understand better what we need. And so I want to make sure that we don't try to make this document more than it needs to be at this point. And I don't know if I articulated that very well, but that's kind of my thinking.
I think you did articulate it well, but I'm a little unsure where that leaves us. I agree. I was surprised when Heather sent that out yesterday to see the SCROG's 50-page thing. And if I had missed that before, I apologize, but it's
new.
Yeah. So I didn't get a chance to read it, and maybe our goal is for us all to read it. But
what did they use? What was that? I guess, what was that the result of? Was that analyzing what?
Demographics. That
Okay.
That's basically their front end of the information.
And I think if I flipped through it, but it was late last night that I flipped through, and maybe it was our survey results, Aaron.
Some of it's in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's sort of like the chapter that they're doing for each person. And I did feel like, because I had just seen our narrative and then this, it was a little confusing.
It's large.
Yeah.
There's a lot of information in that. I think looking at our narrative and the information that they provided, it's a lot of similar information, maybe more of a data dump on the SCROG end for the demographics and that information that they gathered. The other piece, I think, was they did send a goals. Let me see.
Well, that's because we're having our goals meeting on the 23rd with them,
Right.
where they say, bring your goals. It's a
Well,
little
they provided a sample housing
Yeah.
goal
of what others, right. In fact, I had to,
list, which is, I mean, they're,
you all got that, the housing goals discussion sheet. And that was a little like what we got of recommendations from Connecticut, municipalities, what John and Rachel gave us. But I actually had to put it aside because I thought their goals are much more maybe what you're talking about. Make sure kids who are graduating can come back and live here. Make sure teachers and police officers and, can live in our town. So that's a very different, so I guess I would say the other list is of how we get there. And so maybe that meeting on the 23rd will help focus us in terms of what are our goals and what we're telling the public.
well, that's part of your role, yes, as the committee, to determine how in depth you'd like to be in your recommendations. If you'd like to focus on a broader sense of housing goals, as the SCROG list is, the information provided from John and Rachel has more specifics as far as regulatory changes or action items. So yeah, I think that's, and some towns go one way and others go the other. I think it's really the comfort level of the committee and what you're looking to recommend at this point in the plan. Because, all of these items from SCROG are going to require actual planning to implement these goals, to come up with strategies so these aren't really strategies. These are just long-term, statement goals and no real direction on how to get there. So that's, I think.
Is that in the report that was sent yesterday? The goals that you're talking about?
I think
I'll
it was
send that.
a separate document. Heather sent it as a separate document.
Okay.
And
It's not part of the agenda
either
material.
Heather sent it or it was what Eugene sent and I then sent out to all of you because
Yes,
Eugene sends it to Aaron and then just a few people and so
it
I
was
can't-
you, Sarah. Yes, you sent that yesterday.
I sent it on, and some of you got it straight from Eugene if he
Okay.
thought you should get it. There's-
It said, Aaron D, it said Madison Housing Goals Meeting. It was a forward.
Oh, yeah. I
Okay.
saw the meeting invite. There was a document in there too?
There are attachments, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
There are 3 attachments in that email.
And I'm sorry, because, sometimes he sends these things to me and I don't read the 2-line. And so I look at them and then I see, oh, half of the committee didn't see this. So let's do this.
Can I
Can we
just
send
ask,
it again though, Sarah? Can we just send that
Yeah.
again? I can't seem to find mine either.
I'll
You
send
can't
it.
find
I
yours?
have it
Yeah.
here.
does the
I'm sure I
town
got
have
it.
does the town have like SharePoint or something so that we could have one place to put all these documents and like log in to see them? Or is there any capability to do that? I just feel like there's just a lot of stuff.
I think the issue is that what we need to do is just, as we get things, and Heather, you and I can be the ones who do this. We get things from SCROG and it's really random who they seem to include. So I'm just going to make a note of that when I get a SCROG thing, I'm going to send it out to the whole committee or make sure that Heather does. Then we get random articles. I get random articles from different people. And I don't pass on everything because it's a lot, but I will pass on articles. Heather's pretty good about anything she gets, she passes on to the whole group. So, but I think what you're saying, Erin, is it might be helpful if we say there are documents in here you should read. So let's do this. It is 9:06 and we have now on February 23rd, a meeting with the SCROG for anyone who wants to attend. I think it would be very worthwhile if you're able to come. And that's the one, and I'm jumping ahead a little but that's the one, I'm looking at the time, it's at 1 o'clock and it's on Zoom. And it's the Affordable Housing Plan Community Goals Meeting with SCROG. So this is, well, they have a typo in it, but whatever. So if you didn't get that link, Heather, can we send that out? I mean, although that was in that email. So, and I sent it, I think late last night, but I think Erin just sent it again.
That's today, right? At 1?
No.
No,
the
February
23rd, John.
23rd.
Oh, see, I got a link for today at 1.
Well, maybe that's for another town.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll,
Okay. Anyway, sorry. Yeah, I'll figure it out.
so if you're able to come to that, I think that's gonna help. I think in the meantime, we should go through that 50-page SCROG document, see what's in there, go through the narrative and see what's in there. And for right now, if we're gonna pick goals and think through goals, I really do think it would be helpful to hear our second survey results. So why don't we do our second survey results right now? That might help inform our goals, which will then help inform, as Peter said, picking the few things from this list that we really wanna do. So John or Rachel, do you have those?
Well, and I'm not sure, John, we still have the survey open through today, just for, and that was, so I think we were going to provide an update of.
That's fine. In
what
fact,
our
Erin, one of the
feedback
things I was
was.
gonna ask you is if you thought another week would help turn out where we all write to everyone we know again and say, if you didn't do this, do it. But if you think not, then let's just close it today. And how many people did we get answering it?
So as of today, it's 752.
Yeah, last week or last time it was 700-ish. So
And let me see. I think I can get a summary of how responses came in.
I have a few networks where I didn't send it out, where I
Yeah.
feel like maybe I could do that, because I'd love it to be a few more than 752.
Sure. Well, so then it's maybe worth keeping it open for another week, and then we can, if you keep it open until next Friday, then our meeting 2 Fridays from now, we can present a full accounting of results.
Here, so the source, the source said that they would be willing to write an article. And I have the name of the reporter. So I spoke with the editor, but I have the name of the reporter. But that deadline wouldn't work. Like we would, if we wanted to make the article about the survey, we would need like 2 weeks, I think. I don't know if that's too much time. I mean, the article could be about anything. If we wanted to try to focus it on trying to get people to do the survey.
Why
I
2
think-
weeks?
Yeah, but probably at least 2 weeks.
It's just 2 weeks because of the timing. It's a once a week paper.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it would come out. So if you extended it, not next Friday, which is the 24th, but to the March, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I think an article in the source would drive that. I mean, I have no idea, but my guess is at least a couple of hundred over where we are now. I mean, I can't think of any one thing we could do that would drive more traffic than that article in the source.
Yeah,
Unless we go door to door, you know.
I agree. And I guess there's a little part of me that thinks, why close it at all? We can present on results at a certain point, but
That's true
as
too.
people
That's
start
true
to
too.
figure out about affordable housing in Madison and say, I never heard about this and I never got to, why not let them, I mean, doesn't mean we can't capture the data at a certain point and say we did a survey and as of this date, this is what we found out with this sample size.
Mhm.
But leave it open for the town of Madison. So as people figure out what we're doing, they answer it. Is that a crazy idea for a survey?
No, I think that's perfectly
I
fine.
think it's a good idea. I think it's a good idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Aaron, so you have the name of the reporter. So could Sarah contact him or her in the next couple of days and set up an appointment? Something like that? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah. I had reached out to Sarah because I think we need to determine what we would want the article to be about before we contact him.
Yeah.
And then just say, hey, it's got to be an explanation of kind of what we're doing. I mean, they did an article about affordable housing in this committee, I think, within the last 6 months. So
They did. It was one of those where they reached out and and just wrote and didn't wait for us. I think
okay.
some of you
Okay.
got to respond, but yes, and to be fair, Aaron reached out to me like a minute before I set off the alarm, but I am happy to make that happen. So maybe we keep the survey open for another 2 weeks. And I don't think we need,
Yes.
I mean, I think we could keep it open, but we can report on it next Friday, no matter who has answered. How does that sound?
I think that's good. I think get the article in, get the URL in the article, make it about the survey, initial results next Friday, and if way more come in, we can revisit that. But I think that's a good plan. And I think you're right. I think those answers will inform, obviously, what we do next in terms of recommendations. So, is there any budget to do like a full page ad in the source, or is that out of the question?
I mean, we've talked about that. I don't know if this is.
That's generally not effective. I think the article would be much more effective.
Okay. All right. Yeah, let's do it. I think we should move on that for sure.
I do find that the town of Madison reads that. I mean, maybe I really do. So, all right. Maybe if we could move on, because it's getting late, and I do want to go over we have recapped the tour with David Fink, which is sort of equally confusing. But Aaron, maybe you want to talk about what we did. And I'm assuming at this point, none of us heard back anything besides that map, which I wasn't clear if that was informed by our tour.
Yes. So was it last week that we went out?
Who knows at this point?
So Sarah and Aaron and I did meet David Fink and Eugene and Andy from Scrog and a couple others. They were looking for a brief tour of the town to kind of look at where we have existing housing, just to familiarize themselves with the town and potential properties that could be even considered for redevelopment or affordable housing. It was a little vague going into the meeting as far as who was directing the tour. And so we just kind of went with it.
You did a good job, Aaron. You stepped up to the plate.
Aaron did a great job. It was the kind of thing where David said, we're doing a tour and whoever wants to come. And then he was like, so who's giving us the tour? And Aaron said, if I had known, I would have planned something. And I know, Aaron, you were thinking, why didn't Sarah tell me? But it was not.
Well, yeah, well, anyway, so we ended up going.
You did a very nice tour.
We drove them down through our denser shoreline areas to give them a picture of our shoreline and our parks, beach areas, and then we headed up and passed through the green, past the island school, because of course this was prior to referendum as well. So we wanted to show properties, Island and Academy School area, just to kind of familiarize themselves with what our downtown area is. The senior center, we drove through Madison Center. We looped through New Road. We have some parcels there that were identified as redevelopment areas at the intersection of the Hammonasset connector. Again, then we headed north. We show them where our town campus was, up our school campus, Ryerson and Brown, and explained what our school renewal program, proposal was. As we headed back towards our other school campus, they identified, the Klein's Golf Range as an open parcel, headed down Cops, and drove through our Polson High School campus, and explained the potential for the Mungertown Road purchase and reconstruction of schools, the elementary school. And then we headed back down towards town through Cops Road, showing the Jeffrey School location, Bower Park, some other industrial properties that are vacant as well. And that brought us around to Concord Meadows to show our largest affordable housing development. And we explained how we have grants to have some connectivity through sidewalks from our affordable housing development downtown, and part of that project. And that just kind of gave them a brief picture, to familiarize themselves with our town and how our downtown area is set up, and pedestrian accessibility, and essentially confirming the more rural, areas north of 95, and some challenges if we have for transit, things like that. And that was basically our little tour. It took about an hour. And from that information, our consultant created this little GIS map, which is included in the email that both Sarah and I forwarded on. And it shows these locations as potential
Opportunities.
redevelopment areas. Yeah. The only other one that we didn't drive by that actually David Fink brought up was the Sisters of Mercy property on Neck Road. He had indicated that they had done or partnered with an affordable housing development in another municipality. So that was one property that he came in with that thought in mind.
Say, Aaron.
Yes.
One time planning and zoning had a opportunities list that Dave was working on. I don't know if you've seen that list at all, but it's out there. I can dig it up and send it to you. We were as a committee, we talked about it at one time for further redevelopment. It wasn't necessarily with an eye towards affordable housing, but
Right.
It could be. I'll dig that up and see if I can find it.
Great. Yeah, that's helpful, because actually, and I thought of it actually, after we did the tour, that, we could have gone through this property, or I could have shown, so.
Well, it's just a lot of, the winter club, or off of New Road
Exactly.
there. I mean, there's just a lot of things out there.
Exactly.
I'll find it. I've got it. I just got to crack my filing system.
So I did respond to Eugene after he had sent that list, and I said, I think we may actually have some updates to this as well. And that's, that could just be a general possibilities, not necessarily a recommendation that we would be, promoting affordable housing on a specific parcel in the plan, but that these properties do exist in town, and the potential is there for either the town or a private developer in the future. So that was,
Aaron, I think that list would be really helpful for, just a really small subcommittee to look over. And I mean, some plans do mention some general places in them.
right.
And I briefly looked at what Scroggs sent us, and it felt like things were circled, but I feel like that was maybe based on our tour. That was not
It was
this
exactly.
full, we didn't really go up north that much. We didn't have that much time. So.
And we weren't prepared to show them, if
we
that
were
was
prepared to show them
goal.
the town, which I think you did a good job of showing them. But I mean, it was more billed to me like, we drive through town and we show you, look at this area that has no, it's a commercial area that has nothing in it. I thought it was more like little by little, we'll get there. So I think, Peter, that list would be amazing.
Yes. And Peter, I also
I've sent it off already.
Oh, you had it. I was going to say, I have
Yeah,
Dave's
no, I
drive.
found
I can search through as well.
I sent it to Sarah and to Aaron.
Good. So we can use that as a starting point. also, which, yeah, is that actually in our list of goals as recommending specific properties?
Well, I notice other plans have talked about it. I mean, John can talk about it a little
Yeah,
bit,
and
but I think
Essex
some of the
did,
plans
right?
that I've read have had, suggested areas that we might think about. Essex did that, I know.
I like
Peter,
that.
can you send that?
idea.
Peter, can you send that around to the group? I'd like to see that as well.
Oh, sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
happy to.
I'll pass it along.
Okay, thanks, Aaron.
Sure.
I like the idea of not an all inclusive, but having some properties listed, because I feel like things go a lot better in Madison where people feel like you didn't hide the ball in any way. And I also feel like just posting some of these properties gives people a chance to say absolutely not there, or that's a really good idea there, before we've gone too far with anything. So I mean, to the extent we can, I don't see why we wouldn't, but we wouldn't say these are the places, or, okay, so I mean, I know it's getting late, and I feel like basically we have a lot of work to do rather than maybe have done a lot of work at this meeting. I think on the table is a few of us are reviewing the narrative and getting back to John and Rachel this week. I will talk to the reporter and maybe also direct the reporter to one or two of you if the reporter's willing, and we'll make sure that we talk about the survey. We'll extend the survey at least for 2 weeks, but a week. So at our next meeting, we will look at the survey results wherever they may be, and then Peter, maybe Peter and Aaron, do you want to sort of take a look at that list, the list you just sent out together, and start to narrow things down? Would it be helpful to have another person do that with you?
Take a look. I mean, I think the list, it's gotten old because it's got like Island on it now, and that's been adjudicated at this point. But I want to look at it first before.
Okay, fine.
It's pretty old.
That
I mean,
might
it
be
dates back.
the only thing that's gotten adjudicated. So, but fair enough.
And Sarah, if I could, we hadn't really kind of resolved this question, but and I've been sort of holding back on it, but I would be happy to, if it's appropriate, go through that long list of potential recommendations, action items, and pick some based on our conversations, based on my understanding of Madison, that I would, as a consultant, recommend. I'll pick out some.
I mean, yes.
Fantastic.
That's, I think,
That is a great idea.
Yeah.
That is a great idea, John.
Yeah, there's going to be some themes that come out that are in all the reports that we're going to want to include, like, a housing authority, et cetera, et cetera.
So, okay, I'll.
That's a great idea.
I'll do a tentative shortlist.
Very much.
John, that's really helpful. And,
Great.
you know what all of those things mean and how we might get there. Should you have questions, that are about Madison, obviously reach out to any of us. If you want to just throw around, this is what I'm thinking and this is why, and make sure that, you feel like we agree that that's Madison, that would be really helpful.
I'll coordinate that with you, John.
Well, okay.
And also it would be, not to keep adding to your plate, but as part of the analysis, it would be interesting to talk. I mean, I think we need to talk about with the pros and cons, right? So like, we're recommending this. This is what, some of the downsides might be. You know what I mean? Because I guess I don't want to recommend something without, kind of thoroughly looking at everything. I know Peter's point is that this is just a starting point. And a lot of it might just be that we're going to make a recommendation to the Planning and Zoning Committee to look into something further because we think it has potential, right? So we're not solving everything. I get that, but it would be good
we can look at the recommendations that John gives us, who's an expert, and we can dive deep then into those culled down recommendations, which would be, I think, a really kind of streamlined way to go, and have the benefit of relying on somebody who has done this and understands it and is deep into it. So I think that's, but again, that doesn't preclude doing a deep dive once those recommendations come.
Yeah, agreed. And I just want part of the deep dive to be, okay, well, because there's no perfect solutions, right? So like that we also look at some of the downsides of, some of the strategies, and it could just be that that's fine. We think that it's still worthwhile to recommend something, but I just want to kind of look at it from both points of view.
Both points of view, Aaron, that's crazy.
Yeah. Well, I like to anticipate objections,
That's the lawyer in her.
I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm with you.
I can't help
We're
it.
all we're all lawyers here. All right.
All right. So do we have other things that we need to cover? I'm just looking, and I feel like we've maybe, given ourselves some homework for the next 2 weeks. If you're someone who doesn't have homework and you want homework, please reach out to me, and you can reach out to Aaron, Heather, or me, because we can give you something. And for those of us who said we were going to do something, I promise this is the week we're going to do it. So, and for those of you who can come to the SCROG meeting, I think that will be helpful just to hear at least what they're saying. And I think we all have homework of reading that 50-page SCROG document, which I really don't think will take that long because there's a lot of graphics and, so I think you could read it, well, quickly. And I think, is that it? Does anyone have anything else right now? Okay.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I think we should adjourn, and I will see everyone in 2 weeks and some of you before that.